Welcome to True Reddit Reads, where real-life stories will shock you, infuriate you, and make it impossible to look away. Have you ever thought you truly understood your family? The people you call your own in today's episode? I'm going to tell you a story that made me lose faith in the very idea of family. A single mother, a budding romance, a seemingly harmless encounter. But everything turned into a nightmare when dark secrets were exposed and the person you thought was protecting you turned out to be the one dragging you straight into hell. If you think love and family can't both fall apart at the same time, listen closely, because this story will prove you wrong. Chapter 1. She lived in the same boarding house as me. I never thought that something as seemingly minor as sharing a boarding house could turn into a nightmare, but it did. And I became the living witness to the entire story. I lived in a small boarding house near the university, the kind of old rundown building with walls as thin as paper and absolutely no privacy. Each floor had 6 rooms, a shared kitchen, shared bathrooms, and a narrow corridor that always smelled musty. But the rent was cheap and it was close to school, so I accepted it. Everything started when she moved in, the girl in the room opposite mine. Her name was Lynn, a freshman. I heard her name the first time she introduced herself to the landlady through a slightly open door. At that time, I didn't pay much attention. New students moving in was nothing unusual, but Lynn was different from the others. She was overly friendly. At first, it was just morning greetings, questions like, "What's your major?" Then it escalated to her knocking on my door every evening for one excuse or another, borrowing the kettle, asking for the Wi-Fi password, requesting instant noodles. I thought she was just a sociable type, until things went too far. One time I was taking a nap when there was a rapid knocking on my door. I opened it to find Lynn holding a glass of orange juice. She said, "I made this for you." You look so tired. I had never mentioned that I was tired. I asked how she knew, and Lynn smiled, pointed to my door, and said, "The walls are thin. I heard your heavy breathing." I didn't know whether to laugh or feel uneasy. Part of me felt a chill, but I still thanked her, took the glass, and closed the door. I didn't drink it. After that day, Lynn began doing stranger things. She knocked on my door every day, sometimes bringing pastries, other times suggesting we go to the supermarket together. I gradually started declining. Every time I refused, her eyes would darken slightly, enough for me to notice, but not enough to be openly scary. I began to realize that every move I made seemed to be under her watch. I went to school. A few minutes later, Lynn would leave too. I came home. Less than 10 minutes later, she would knock on my door. "You just got back." Once I tried coming home late to avoid her. I stayed out with friends until 11 p.m. When I opened my door, I found a bag of bread waiting outside, the kind I liked from the bakery I often visited. No name, nothing else. I knew it was her. Chapter 2. The truth behind the leather wallet. I came home completely shaken. My body was trembling. I could still hear the echo of that woman's voice, soft, eerily gentle, as if I were a pet being coaxed. I rushed into my room, slammed the door, and collapsed onto the floor. It took me several minutes to realize that I was still holding the leather wallet. The wallet that woman had shoved into my hands before leaving. I stared at it. Small, simple, with worn corners. Yet for some reason, it sent a chill down my spine. Curiosity and fear tangled together as I opened it. Inside was an old photograph. The photo showed 3 people: a man, a woman, and a little boy, around 4 or 5 years old. My heart started racing uncontrollably. The woman in the photo, it was her. There was no mistaking it. But the man, I had never seen him before. And the boy, there was something about him that I couldn't look away from. I searched the wallet more carefully. A business card slipped out. On the back, scrawled hastily, were the words, "You are that boy." I froze. Me, I am. That boy, then what was she to me? Mother, grandmother, a deranged relative. I ran to my drawer, pulled out the family album, and flipped through each page frantically as if searching for proof of my own existence. Nothing. There were no photos from my early childhood, no pictures of me learning to walk, learning to talk, only images from when I started middle school, and even those looked like they had been printed recently. I turned to call my mother, the woman who had raised me from childhood to adulthood. Her voice was warm, as always, but when I asked about my early years, about the strange woman in the park, she went silent. Silent for an uncomfortably long time. Then she sighed and said, "Don't listen to strangers. Some things, the less you know, the better." She hung up. I felt as if I were falling into a bottomless pit where everything I had ever trusted was crumbling. I couldn't sleep that night. I just stared at the photo in the wallet, three people smiling happily, and asked myself, who am I, and more importantly, who was I? Chapter 3, my father started over, but not for me. I don't blame my dad for trying to start over, truly. After everything that had happened, I understood that he wanted a fresh start, a life untainted by screaming, resentful glances or the heavy guilt that weighed on him every time he walked down the hallway. But what I didn't expect was that he would start over without me in it. After the final court hearing, he sold the house and moved to another city, nearly 300 miles away. No warning, no goodbyes. I knew he still kept in touch with a few old friends, but with me, not a single message. At first, I still tried to reach out. Sent texts, made a few calls. At first, he would pick up, replying curtly, "I'm fine. Don't worry." Then, silence. Complete silence. I heard from an acquaintance that he was dating a woman named Julia, a widowed nurse living with her two sons. The person even added, "He seems really happy. Smiles a lot." I didn't know how I was supposed to feel. Part of me was happy for him. After all those years in hell, he deserved happiness. But another part, the part that had been left behind, the part that still woke up in the middle of the night from nightmares, that part felt betrayed. I am his daughter, the one who crawled into his room at night out of fear, the one he promised he would always be there for. And yet now, he was starting a new chapter with another family. One night, drunk out of my mind, I sent him a long, rambling text, telling him I hated him, that he had abandoned me, that he was a fraud. And then I cried. All night. He didn't reply. I had thought I would carry that crack in my heart forever, as proof that I wasn't good enough for anyone to keep. Until I met Emma. Chapter 4. The Distorted Room. I didn't return to university right away. After everything that had happened, I needed to withdraw to think. And honestly, I needed a place without her dark eyes. I went to live with my brother in a small coastal town. Things were simpler there, no lecture halls, no crowded hallways, just the waves, the wind, and me. But even in that place, she still found me. I woke up with a start at 3 a.m. The room was pitch black, but I felt someone sitting at the foot of my bed. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. There was only the sound of the wind and a very familiar scent, the perfume she used to wear. I turned on the light as soon as I could. No one was there. But one thing made my blood run cold. The pillow at the foot of the bed was indented, as if someone had just been sitting on it. After that night, I began locking my bedroom door every night. I told myself maybe I was just stressed, maybe I was haunted by my own mind, until I saw my old phone, the one I thought I had lost long ago, sitting on my desk. I picked it up. Inside was a 45-second recording. Nothing but heavy, rapid breathing pressed right against the mic. And at the end, a whisper, "I know where you are. I remember sitting next to you." I threw the phone into the sea the next morning, but somehow, I have no idea how, it reappeared on my bed the following night, soaked, still playing that same recording. And this time, there was a new message. "I'm here, open the door." I didn't open it, but the door was already open. Chapter 5. The Figure in the Yard and the Red Hoodie. I kept thinking it was over once we moved into the new house. It was still a quiet neighborhood, friendly neighbors, white picket fences, neatly trimmed grass, and streetlights, casting a soft yellow glow like in a movie. At that moment, I breathed a sigh of relief. I genuinely believed our family had left the nightmare behind in the old apartment, until the night I saw him standing in the yard. I was unpacking in my daughter's room when the motion sensor light in the front yard flickered on. I looked down. My heart felt like it had been crushed. A man in a red hoodie was standing right in the middle of the yard, the exact posture I had seen on the camera at the old apartment. I ran downstairs and threw open the door, but he had vanished. My husband didn't see anyone. He told me I must have imagined it, that maybe someone was just walking by. But I knew. I recognized that gait, the way he stood, with his hands in his pockets, the slight tilt of his head. He wasn't staring directly at the house. He was looking into my bedroom window. A few days later, I asked my husband to install cameras around the yard. Brand new 360-degree rotation night motion detection. I needed evidence. I needed to know who he was and why he had found us. One night, around 3 a.m., I heard a soft creak, like someone stepping onto the wooden porch. I grabbed my phone, opened the camera app, and there he was, standing there, staring directly into the camera. No mask, no attempt to hide, just standing and staring. The footage was slightly distorted, but I could see his face, pale as death eyes, black as night, as if he knew I was watching through the screen. Then he raised his hand and held something up. It was a plastic bag. Inside, an old teddy bear, the exact one my daughter had dropped back at the old apartment that I'd never found. I screamed, waking my husband. When we ran outside, the yard was empty. No footprints, no bag, nothing. My husband insisted I was having nightmares, but the camera had clearly recorded it. I saved the video and even sent it to the police. They came to check and said, there isn't enough data to identify the suspect. And I hated that phrase so much I wanted to smash the screen. Not enough data. While my whole family was being watched like prey, I started to doubt everything. Had he been following us even before I knew? Did he know every place we moved to? Was he closer than I had ever imagined? And the biggest question of all, why target my daughter? Chapter 6, New Year's Eve and the pig mask. I realized life doesn't always warn you before something happens. It just happens. And that night on New Year's Eve, I truly understood that. The restaurant where I worked had been rented out for a private end-of-year party. Very upscale. They wanted everything discreet, with staff dressed in black uniforms. No unnecessary talking to guests. With double tips, everyone was willing. I was assigned to the bar. At first, the pace was slow. Guests arrived in small groups. Some wore masks, some didn't. But they all had one thing in common. They were dressed elegantly and behaved very strangely. No one actually talked to each other. Just nods, glances. No music, no clinking glasses. Just an eerie silence among the crowd. Like they had agreed beforehand that this party wasn't allowed to be fun. I remember that moment clearly, when the man wearing the pig mask stepped in. Unlike any decorative mask I had seen before, his was truly terrifying, like a pig's head dissected alive. Hollow eyes, cracked lines, and a mouth twisted into a horrific crooked grin. I shivered instinctively, but I said nothing. Just kept wiping glasses. He didn't speak a word, just walked straight to the bar, staring at me through the mask, then slowly pulled out a small box and placed it on the counter. A wooden box. Small, worn, tied with a black ribbon. I didn't know what to do. I asked, "Do you want a drink, sir?" But he didn't answer. Just tilted his head as if listening to me with those fake pig ears. Then turned and disappeared into the crowd. The box stayed there like a warning. I didn't open it. I called the manager, but when he arrived, the box was gone, as if it had never existed. I started feeling chills. Something was off here. The atmosphere was heavy, the silence forced, and the guests never made eye contact with me. I noticed something else. There was no New Year's bell. When the clock struck midnight, no countdown. No one shouted Happy New Year. They just stood there, holding glasses, smiling faintly like they had just witnessed a successful ritual. I wanted to leave, but when I turned my back to clear the bar, I saw a photo placed on the ice tray. A picture of me, taken from behind, in the uniform I was wearing. On the photo, scribbled in messy handwriting, "You look best when you don't know who's watching." I dropped the tray. Glasses shattered. Everyone turned to look. And in their eyes, I saw him, the man in the pig mask, standing at the far end of the room, not speaking, not moving, just staring and tilting his head again. I ran. I didn't care about the money, the uniform, or getting in trouble. All I knew was one thing: I had just escaped a place that wasn't meant for humans. Chapter 7. The Hardest Truth. I used to think the worst thing was losing faith in someone you love. But no worse than that is realizing that person was never real, that love never existed, and all the time you sacrificed the effort you invested, the waiting you endured, it was one-sided. When I walked into that hotel room, he was still asleep, his arm draped over a young woman, a complete stranger. Or maybe not a stranger anymore, because she was the one I had suspected all along. One of the co-workers he had told me was harmless. Don't be paranoid. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't break anything. I just stood there, watching. And I understood. Endings aren't marked by betrayal. Endings happen when it no longer hurts. I stepped back, closed the door, walked straight out of the hotel, and pulled out my phone. Not to call him, but to call my best friend, the one who had been saying all along, "I don't trust this guy. You deserve so much better than him." She picked me up that night. Didn't ask too many questions. Didn't need an explanation. We sat in the car in silence, and for the first time in weeks, I felt relief. I sent him a message, one simple line: "You don't need to justify yourself. We're done. I hope you're happy with your choices." Then I blocked him on every channel, blocked email, blocked his number, blocked mutual friends. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need him to explain why, because I already knew the reason. He didn't betray me out of a moment of weakness. He betrayed me because he had never loved me the way I deserved to be loved. Chapter 8. That baby is no longer mine. I had been sitting in the bathroom for over an hour. The water in the tub had long since gone cold, yet I remained frozen in place. I stared at the door, unblinking, as if waiting for something or someone to step inside. I had dreamed of the day my son would be born. I imagined holding him, inhaling the sweet scent of newborn skin, feeling that sacred bond between mother and child. But the thing sleeping in my room was not my child. It looked exactly like my son. Same face, same tiny birthmark on the left wrist, but its eyes, those eyes weren't those of a newborn. They belonged to something older, wiser, and cruel. At first I thought I was suffering postpartum depression, maybe hormones, maybe sleep deprivation, but no. The truth became harder to ignore every day. I saw it watching me as I slept. Not the unconscious gaze of a baby, but the kind of look that waits for something. One night, I woke at the dead of night to see it lying quietly in its crib, eyes wide open, staring at me as if reading my thoughts. It never cried. Never. Even when hungry, it made only soft, controlled whimpers, as if it were restraining itself. And then one night, I was feeding it the nightlight, casting a dim glow across the room, the silence heavy and suffocating. Suddenly it looked up at me and smiled. That smile, It could not have belonged to a baby less than a month old. It was the smile of an adult, sharp, cold, mocking, disdainful. I dropped the bottle, my hand trembling so badly I almost smashed it. I couldn't scream. My throat was dry locked. From that day on, I left the lights on all night. I didn't dare sleep alone with it. I watched my own child as if guarding against an intruder. I told my husband. He looked at me like I had lost my mind. "You're experiencing postpartum anxiety," he said. "I've read about this. It's common. We'll get through it." But I knew. I could feel it. That was not my child. I started going through ultrasound photos, hospital papers, everything. I searched for the smallest details to confirm my fears. And then I noticed it, the tiny birthmark on my child's leg was gone. The scar, the doctor had said, came from a routine antibiotic injection in the delivery room. I remembered it vividly. I had even kissed it out of pity. And now, it was gone. I clutched my head, gasping. A chill ran down my spine. I was living with a creature disguised as my child, and no one believed me. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't leave. I couldn't tell anyone they would have me committed, but one thing was certain, the baby in that room was not my son, and I had to find my real child before it was too late. Chapter 9. Mom and the Ultimate Truth. I never thought I'd lie to my mother, but this time I had no choice. I told her I was working on a research project at school collecting data on family behavior. I asked her to recount memories from my childhood, especially anything related to my father. At first she seemed surprised, but then she agreed. Maybe she thought I was starting to forgive. Maybe she was just tired of the distance between us. She spoke about family dinners, the times my father held me while I slept. Summer vacations I could barely remember. I asked her when Dad died. "Are you sure it was an accident?" She hesitated for a moment, then forced a smile. "Of course. That's what the police said." But I saw something in her eyes. A fear she couldn't put into words. That night, I listened to her voice recordings again. I compared them to old cassette tapes of conversations with Dad, ones I had found in the garage while cleaning out old boxes. The voice wasn't Dad's, it was hers. She was the last person to see him. She had the medication. And in the autopsy report, there was one detail no one noticed, an unusually high level of sedatives in his blood. The next morning, I confronted her. I didn't yell. I didn't smash anything. I simply laid out the evidence. She was silent for a long time. Then she sighed as if she had been waiting for this day for a very long time. "Your father wanted to take you away," she said. "He planned to remove you from this place, from my life." Do you think I could let that happen? I had no words. He had everything, money, career, and he wanted you too. And me, I was just a woman betrayed. I had never felt so simultaneously cold and pitying toward someone. I left the house, carrying all the documents, recordings, and a copy of the evidence tapes. I didn't know what I would do next, report her or bury it all, but one thing was certain, I could no longer live a lie. And if the truth made everything fall apart, then let it fall apart. At least it would be the truth. Chapter 10. The One Who Knows No Limits. I started to realize something I had always tried to avoid. Sarah didn't know limits. She didn't just want friendship. She wanted to become me. At first I thought I could cut her off, disappear, even change my phone number, and that would be enough. I was wrong. 3 days after I moved, to a place no one knew about, unlisted on social media, I received a letter in my new mailbox. No return address. Inside was an old Polaroid. It was me photographed from behind, in the park near my new home. I froze. No one, and I mean no one, knew I had moved there. I called the police. They came, did the routine, took notes, and told me to be more careful. Then they left, and I was alone again. I installed surveillance cameras, changed the locks, even altered my routines. No more familiar paths, no more usual streets. But I still felt it, that gaze, the way someone was tracking my every step, every little habit. One evening, I came home from work, opened the fridge, and saw a familiar bottled water, the exact one I liked, placed neatly on the top shelf. I hadn't bought it. I was certain I hadn't. I stood frozen in the kitchen, a chill running down my spine, my heart pounding in my chest. I grabbed my phone and called my sister, and while talking, I heard a click, like the back door had just closed. I ran out. No one was there, but on the doorknob, a small handprint smeared with something like oil or cream. I broke down crying. For the first time in my life, I truly felt like prey. Chapter 11. I forgave, but I didn't forget. I returned to my old city on a Friday afternoon, more than a year after everything had ended. The feeling was strange, as if I were walking through the ruins of my own past, the battlefield of my own life. I stood in front of my mother's house, the place that had once been a cage, filled with silence control and false expressions of love. The house looked much smaller now. I wasn't sure if it had really changed, or if I had grown, no longer seeing the world through the fearful eyes of a child. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. I walked past the old park where I had spent countless hours crying after fights with my mother, the place where I had dreamed of a free life, a dream that had once seemed impossibly distant, and now I was living it. I met Emma at our favorite cafe. She was the same, sharp eyes, gentle yet firm voice. We hugged tightly. No words were necessary. That hug was enough to remind me how far I had come. Emma asked me a question I never thought I'd hear. Have you forgiven your mom? I had thought about it for a long time. There were nights I woke up in a start, hands clenched as if she were still there, still controlling me. But then I realized if I kept holding on to anger, she was still controlling me, just in a different way. I told Emma I've forgiven her, but I haven't forgotten. And I won't go back. Forgiveness isn't about giving someone peace. It's about giving yourself freedom. I have learned to love myself, with all my scars, my wounds, and even my mistakes. I am no longer a puppet pulled by the strings of other people's expectations. I am myself, and for me, that is the greatest victory. And that's my story. A journey from hope to despair, and from there to awakening. I used to think that all I needed was love and trust, but now I understand that loving the wrong person doesn't just break your heart, it can shatter your entire life. If you've ever been in a similar situation, deceived, used, abandoned by the very people you trusted most, remember this: you are not alone, and you do not deserve to be treated that way. Thank you for listening all the way through. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to True Reddit Reads so you won't miss the next Reddit drama, where the truth is told in the voices of those who stayed silent for far too long.